Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the only coast to coast radio show all about the information economy. It's called Inside Analysis. Yours truly, Eric Kavanagh here. And I'm very pleased to have an expert dialing in from across the pond, all the way over in Switzerland. Eva Polini has just written a book. I love the title of the book. I can't even say it all on air because they get upset about these things, but BI without the BS, let's say. And I think that's just fantastic because Ava, let's just go ahead and jump right in to your point a moment ago before we hit the record button, sometimes companies don't even know why they're engaging in some business intelligence initiative. I mean, they think they know, they have a general idea, but business value is the objective of all these initiatives. And it really pays to pay attention to that and to know what you're trying to achieve as you're starting to build some solution, right?
Yes, we came up with the conclusions that most of the projects they don't achieve a real value, and
Hmm.
can't be a really cool technical success, but the business and the stakeholders they are not really fully satisfied.
Hmm.
50% of the time, it's because the requirement is not defined properly, and it's a business analysis or requirement engineering problems.
Hmm.
That's how we came up with this book.
Hmm. So tell me a bit about where you go in the book. I think you're spot on to focus on requirements. You know, truth be told, historically, requirements gathering has been very difficult. And it's difficult for lots of different reasons. One of which is that, and I'll just throw my theory at you and let's see what you think about this. You know, we view language as a very rich medium for communication, which it is, but it's only because we have so much context in our heads. But really, when you communicate with anyone, there are all these assumptions that are made. And what I've noticed over the years is even with very smart people, they seem to think that you already know what they think, even though they haven't told you yet. Like, and that, you know, I do this myself too. You just presume that people understand what you're talking about, but that's really not accurate. You have to dig into the weeds and really ask another question and another question to get to the core of what that business requirement really is. What do you think?
Yeah, and there is a lot of also misconceptions
Mm,
because sometimes we talk about requirements, needs, or will of the users of the business, and we are all mixing these vocabularies.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes it's even schizophrenia. We change the meaning of the word again along the conversations,
mm-hmm.
and it's look like the a couple relationship. You think you answer what your partner wants, and a couple of years after frustrations, he comes and say, "I never asked for that."
That's
And
not good.
it's a big one,
Mm-hmm,
especially because in those projects we are all coming with a different background.
mm-hmm,
So we are all coming with a different vocabulary training and even domain. There is also some domains where it's confusing on purpose.
mm,
Saying, for example, laws. If you talk about laws, a contract mean a
mm-hmm.
way different, a lot of different things according to the
Right.
context you are in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes it's really not even the language; it's on purpose with a lot of confusions or ambiguities.
Yeah. Well, and that's difficult to get to the root cause.
Yeah.
I think is part of the problem. And I think a lot of times people just do not provide enough context for their own answers. And this is where I'm going with presuming that people know what you're talking about. And you really, I mean, I've seen this with doctors, not to get too far off track here, but a lot of times doctors, at least here in the United States, they assume so much and they just give you this cursory answer about something. And you're like, well, what does that even mean? What are you talking about? They're giving you what they think is the answer, and it is in a certain context with certain framing. But when you
Mhm.
just get bits and pieces of information that and you don't have the context, that doesn't get you anywhere. So you really it's important for whoever's responsible for the solution, whoever the owner is, to make sure they are constantly asking questions and taking steps back and just making sure, you know, these are the kinds of things. And of course, you want to record these conversations. Like these days, it's lovely that we have Read AI and Fireflies and Otter and all these things that are recording everything. So you can go back and say, well, actually, in this meeting, you said that you did want this or that. And just by having that background, just by having your I's dotted and your T's crossed, you're going to increase your chances of success, right?
Yeah, there is a lot also really, I like your example with the doctors because it's also about how to frame the conversation with your stakeholders
Mm-hmm.
to get them defining the problem and not the solutions.
Right.
Because it's really going to your doctors and say, hey, I have flu. Please,
Mm-hmm.
can you give me medicines? And the doctor will probably roll back saying like, hey, what are your symptoms? And I can tell you if you have flu or not.
Right. That's
And
funny.
many times we, as a business analyst, the business analysts come back and say, hey, the stakeholders, they don't know what they want.
Right.
Actually, most of the time, they don't know how to define the solutions, but they
Right.
perfectly knows what the problem is.
Right.
So this book is really about a lot of different tools to get the right informations according to your context. It
Mm.
can be going to stakeholders. Like most of the collections of requirements are with interviews and workshops.
Mm-hmm.
We come back saying like, I'm not sure the workshop was successful and I waste my time there. That took me half a day. But there's a lot of other techniques that we don't even think of.
Hmm. Like
It
what?
can be, for example, everyone knows the brainstorm,
Mm-hmm.
but I rarely see anti-brainstorm, counter-brainstorm,
Hmm.
which is a brainstorm coming with all the bad ideas to solve the problem. And it's a
Interesting.
way more creative. We don't judge people. And after we flip the ideas,
Interesting.
it can be the DELF method.
What's it called?
DELF.
Dev? Oh, the dev method, like development?
DELF, no, DELF like the city in Athens.
Oh, okay.
And it's a method to get the requirements and prioritize the requirements, even if stakeholders, they hate each other and they don't want to talk with each other. So there is no way you can bring them in the workshop. There is no
Interesting.
really output of that.
Interesting.
I'm working now on the neuroscience side.
Hmm.
How do you get the requirements from your user triggering their emotions?
Hmm.
I can say I have a cheat sheet for a business analyst. Everyone has the same requirement. Having a good day, not having problem with the management, having a coffee and come back at home at the right time. All
That's
the
funny.
question is, what does it look like for them?
Right. Right.
So
Sure.
starting by that questions, for example, one of the method is that. Starting by that, it's asking the users to say, hey, I have this problem and that's keeping me awake at night.
Mm-hmm.
That is my risk. That is what I need to monitor. And
Mm-hmm.
then you say, hey, what kind of actions can you take to manage that problem? And there's they give you the actions, so the process and the data set you need.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't define the layout of the output.
Mm-hmm. You know, a consultant I've done some work with, he's been on the show several times, very smart guy, John Ladley. Probably 20 years ago, he said something to me that really jumped out at me. He said that you should never walk into a requirement setting like that with a blank sheet of paper. He said you should always think about what you think the solution should look like based on your information and start with that as a framework. And he said, even if people get upset and are not happy at all with your suggestion, that's a good thing because now they're engaged. He said if they come out and say, "Oh, no, 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 that's not right at all," that's a good thing because now they are focused and engaged in the conversation. Because the danger is that they're not engaged and they just gloss over their feelings or their sentiments, and you don't get the requirements. What do you think about that?
Yeah, setting the baseline, it's forcing them to think the delta they need and come and negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know also the project will move forward if they don't come and negotiate.
Right, right,
Well,
right.
there's it also needs a business analyst able to do the phase of elicitation and specification separately
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
because sometimes we just focus on having the right information without any ambiguity. Then
Mm-hmm.
the first phase of the requirement is like getting broad informations
Uh-huh.
and getting the users vent out all the problems.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, which I really like this this way to set the baseline and propose the solutions
Mm-hmm.
and go
Mm-hmm.
from that.
Right.
But it's
Get them
working for visual, for example.
right. Well, you have to give them something tangible to respond to. I think his point was that if you just have a blank sheet of paper, it's almost like writing code. I did an interview yesterday with a girl who was joking that in her developer days, she would always go to Substack or some other place to find a foundation to work from, as opposed to just sitting there at a command prompt and hacking out line after line. Now, very good developers can do that, but you always want to start somewhere. You want some kind of a skeleton even if you're going to change it, even if you realize, wait a minute, we got this all wrong, we have to take a step back. And I'm guessing that's probably another good recommendation is don't be afraid to step back or push back as needed, right?
It's yeah, and it's also those sessions are always eliciting user requirements, but you also have business requirements. How it comes of stability and maintainability and time performance and quality.
Mm-hmm.
All the things who are needed for the organizations and for the corporations, but not particularly for one stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mind about the security. Yeah, but the security is actually mandatory to manage
Mm-hmm.
data leak and risks those days.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
no one, no commercial manager or marketing manager will come saying like, oh, I want something really secure. Yeah, no, that doesn't happen like that.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, security, especially these days, is a very, very, very big deal. You know, the more.
Security, like the projects are becoming more expensive those days. The
Mm-hmm.
maintainability and the to make sure because the resources in development are really rare and scarce now. So you need to make
Right.
sure they're not super spending their time in production support.
Right, right. Maintainability, that's the hard part, right? It's like the ideation is fun and then building it is also fun and then someone has to maintain this solution over a period of time. Do you find that's often underappreciated or overlooked to an extent?
I think it's underappreciated, and especially when you have productions and development teams separated.
Mm-hmm.
Because the development teams want to get things out of the doors as quick as
Right.
possible,
Right.
and the smaller projects and so get rid of most of the scope, so push the cost in maintenance in the production.
Right.
And if the same person doing both, the production support is not so much value because
Hmm.
it doesn't bring new things to the stakeholders.
Interesting.
And it's also really difficult to keep high level resources or value resources on the project and developers because more they're getting seniors, less they want to do production support because it's boring.
Right. That's funny. That's very true, though. You know, I realized the book just came out. So again, folks, this book has just been published. BI without the BS, although I think it's spelled out in the book title. Um, Gen AI has taken the world by storm, and you know, Anthropic in particular with Claude, they've really crystallized around code development and code generation. How big a deal is that, in your opinion, in terms of the business intelligence industry? How much of a shift is happening because coding is now a lot easier and a lot faster than it used to be? It seems to me there's sort of an impedance mismatch now between the business and the coders where it used to be the business was waiting on first it was waiting on hardware. Now they're waiting on then they were waiting on developers. Now the hardware and the developers are waiting on the business. Right? What do you think?
Yeah, it will be all about trust and
Hmm.
transparency of what is delivered.
Mm-hmm.
Because we used to say, sorry, cannot say that online.
Yeah.
Um,
That's fine.
um, poop in, poop out.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
We should
right.
say.
Right. Garbage in,
Um,
garbage out. Yeah.
yeah, garbage in, garbage out. And now it will be more garbage in, more garbage out. So if you do
Mm-hmm.
stuff with Gen AI and you don't know how to manage it,
Mm-hmm.
you will just do more garbage.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to teach to my students. I'm
Mm.
teaching in Paris at Sorbonne. And I used to say to the students, you can use AI for your homework,
Mm-hmm.
but you are accountable for that. And if you don't
Right.
know how to prompt properly, there is
Right.
no chance it will work. So
Right.
use it if you know how to do it by hand,
Right. That's
by yourself.
interesting. Well, I had an epiphany a while ago thinking about Gen AI and thinking about the fact that really since the dawn of the data industry, let's call it, in the mainframe days and then in the early days of data warehousing and all through this last 40 years, an arc of 40 years, we have focused on making systems faster, more performant, being able to crunch more numbers, bigger data sets, more integrations. But one thing was never in question, and that was accuracy. That was quality. In other words, you would always get out of a database what you put into it, period. That was just accepted as the norm. And now with Gen AI, it's almost like you're throwing a noise filter on the end of this pristine process because it is probabilistic in nature. Now, we have RAG models, we have agentic AI, all sorts of techniques, graphs, even that are designed to ground the results coming from Gen AI, but nonetheless, it is still probabilistic. How do you see that movie playing out over time?
It would say the one of the project, and you were mentioning it at the beginnings, it's bringing values to the stakeholders.
Hmm.
Many times we deliver traditional BI without AI, artificial intelligence, and the stakeholders, they don't really already trust our platforms.
Right, right.
So
That's right.
now you just had smoke and fuse,
Yeah,
and on that,
yeah,
if you were not able to build the trust and make the adoptions of your users and your stakeholders before artificial
right,
intelligence,
right.
it will be worse after because you can explain less and you are
Yeah,
less organized.
yeah. This
And
is very, very true. Yeah.
there I saw many users, they're like, oh, I don't want to make decisions from this dashboard because I'm not 100% confident of what's
Right,
going on here.
right.
Can you imagine now we answer, yeah, it's just random stats.
That's
That
not,
doesn't help. So
no.
you need to make sure your users is getting the end and understanding end to end.
Yeah, that's right. Well, folks, don't touch it. I'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis with Eva Poloni. We'll be right back. All right, folks, time for the podcast bonus segment here on Inside Analysis. And once again, we've got Eva Poloni, who has just come out with a book. She's from Switzerland, although she's lived around all around the world, from Canada to Australia, trying to help organizations get a better handle on their data. And her new book is out. BI without the BS, basically. I love that. And in our last segment on this show, you had commented on the dangers of Gen AI being made up, like just being generative, and that's what it's supposed to be. Now, there's a lot of effort being put into grounding these systems. So there's a RAG model, retrieval augmented generation, there's agentic AI. And there are some companies we're working with that are doing very cool things, like Inside Software has Simba, so the ODBC and JDBC drivers. I think you probably agree, Ava, that the closer you can keep this Gen AI to the data itself, to the hard data that is relevant to a particular question, the better off you're going to be, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that one?
The closer you keep Gen AI to the data, like
Yeah,
through drivers like ODBC and JDBC, real transactional enterprise data. You want that to be the fuel for anything a generative engine does, right?
yeah. And you will need to explain all the steps and the transformations and what's going on all the funnel and the channel of your data work
Mm.
to your
Mm-hmm.
users for them to trust what's going on.
Right.
I'm used to work on a legal project
Hmm.
where the fines and the stakes are really high, where you can not really have any leeway on statistics. And my users always said, I want to have the trace of the business process and the
Mm-hmm.
event you monitor in the data, but also on every data move in the database
Mm.
to be able
Wow.
to justify the output.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's why your Gen AI, if it's producing dashboards and data, That's great. But if you really want to have your user using it, you also need to come with your data governance and data pipe and explanations on the back of that.
Hmm. You need the explainability, basically, is what you're
Yeah,
talking about on every
the,
step along the way.
the
Right.
explainability, but not only usually explainability is used for artificial intelligence,
Hmm.
but we rarely use it for data traditional pipe, which now you will need explainability on the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
Where my
So,
data, where it's coming from, when it's got picked up, then we barely do that in reporting, actually, in dashboarding now.
right. Well, so you're talking about data lineage, for example,
Yeah.
data provenance. Where did the data come from? What has been changed to it? I mean, part of the challenge, I'm sure you would agree, is that most large organizations, especially, already have such a vast data estate with so many different systems, and you have all these ETL scripts that have been built up over the years, and it's almost like an archaeological dig when you go in there and try to get to the root of things and figure out what's going on. I am hopeful that BI without the BS can get people to focus on the real business value, and that we can use a lot of this AI to clean up the unwieldy nature of our data estates. But what do you think about that? Can AI help us get a better handle on the condition of our data and the governance of our data to improve the outcomes?
I'm sure what will be useful. It's if you display everything from the data and the dashboard and explain all the context and everything, it can be like overwhelming for users because
Hmm.
your data or your KPIs will come with a massive disclosure.
Right.
Then artificial intelligence at that point can help the users. The user is prompting, "Are you sure that where it's coming from?" And it's giving the just enough data for the user to trust.
Hmm. Right.
Because in how dashboarding, we always have like a page with info and notes and disclosures on the side that
Right.
nobody reads.
Right.
Then at that
Interesting.
point, the stakeholders can create the trust with the
Mm.
artificial intelligence because he
Yeah.
got what he needs.
Right. That's a very good point. Well, we got about 3 minutes left here. What's your parting advice for data practitioners, for business intelligence professionals, and business people in general? What's your main thrust of advice for them to get things right in the future?
I will say um, a project failing to achieve goals, it's definitely not okay and it should not be accepted.
Hmm.
It's most of the time because we didn't think about the requirement engineering approach. We didn't think about how do we collect the data a better way. The say user don't know what they want. I used to transform that to a business analyst need to have better practices.
Mm-hmm.
I need to change approach. We never challenge the way we collect the informations,
Hmm.
which is one of the reasons why we fail. And do
Hmm.
we focus on solutions more than on the problem?
Hmm.
Startups have a good say on that. Focus, finding love of the problem, not of the solutions, if you
Hmm.
want to be successful.
How
So,
interesting is that? Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good point.
a lot of startup fails because they love their projects, but they forget about their users and the problem of their users. We love our data and to prove we are good technically, but we forget to fall in love about the user's problems.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good way to close this out. Well, folks, look this lady up online, Eva Polini. That's EVA. Last name is Polini. Good Italian name, if I'm not mistaken. Going way back to my days in Italy. Ciao, ragazza. Amo Italia. I love Italy. Well, folks, look her up online, and the new book is out right now. BI without the BS. Very good stuff. And folks, we'll talk to you next time. You've been listening to Inside Analysis.